Hi, I'm Joel Reedus, registered dietitian nutritionist with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about how the foods we eat and the drinks that we consume affect our blood sugar and diabetes. Whenever people find out they have diabetes or they're deciding they want to manage their diabetes better, one of the first things they ask is, give me the meal plan. I want to know the foods to eat and to not eat. And really, people with diabetes can eat pretty much all the same foods someone without diabetes can, but we really need to pay attention to those carbohydrates. And it's not one size fits all, because some people will be able to do well with more carbohydrates, some will need less. But for our populations that we see in our classes, most of the people are coming in and they're kind of eating a typical American diet, and they are a lot of times trying to lose weight. So we usually recommend starting out with about 180 grams of carbs per day, which would be 12 carb choices, because one carb choice is 15 grams. That's a system that we teach in our classes, but that's kind of a starting point. Now, some people that might be way more than what they need, but it gives you a starting point. There's three types of nutrients called the macronutrients that we consume in large amounts that provide calories or energy for our bodies. Those are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. They are all very important, have different function in our bodies, but carbohydrates are what readily turn to sugar in our bodies, and they have a bigger effect on our blood sugar. So you might be thinking, well, if I want to manage my blood sugar, I just won't eat any carbohydrates. So that would be a keto diet or some kind of similar extremely low-carb diet, and that might work well for a very small number of people, but the majority of the people do not do well just cutting out carbohydrates. Most people do well having a balanced diet with a mix of carbohydrates, protein, and fat, healthy fats. So whenever we think of carbohydrates, we think a lot of times about starchy foods. The top foods people think of usually is pasta, potatoes, cereal, rice, and those all do contain carbohydrates, but I don't want people to think that all carbohydrates are bad. Proteins and fat are very important for our bodies. Carbohydrate has the biggest effect on our blood sugar. So in our classes, we spend a lot of time talking about identifying carbohydrates and figuring out the right amount for you. So I want to be clear that carbohydrates are not all bad. It's not something that you have to avoid, but it is something you need to pay attention to manage your diabetes. Foods like grains contain carbohydrates, so anything made with flour, pasta, rice, all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't matter if it's white bread or whole wheat bread, white rice versus brown rice. The whole grain is going to have some more nutrients, and it is going to be what I recommend, but they both have carbohydrates, so you want to take them both into consideration and pay attention to that. Fruits are another very healthy food group that do contain carbohydrate. That's where, that sweetness comes from, those natural sugars. So although it's a healthy food, you want to pay attention to how much you eat. Another category of foods that contain carbohydrate is our starchy vegetables, so things like corn, potatoes, split peas, any kind of beans, not green beans per se, but like our black beans, pinto beans, all our southern peas we like to eat around here. They all have starch, which is carbohydrate, so that's something we want to take into account. Now, one thing that is surprising to a lot of people is milk and yogurt actually contain carbohydrates. So you've heard probably of lactose. Well, that's a natural sugar that's in milk, and yogurt will have a little bit of lactose in it after it's turned into yogurt, and then often there's sugar added into it. So if you are eating yogurt, be sure you're reading those labels, because it can vary greatly between different types and brands of how much carbohydrate is in there. Some foods that do not contain much carbohydrate, meats, eggs, fats, those have essentially no carbohydrate unless you're, say, if you take this chicken breast and you add a breading to it to fry it, or you add a sweet sauce, then it'll have carbohydrate, but naturally it's essentially none. And the other main category of low carbohydrate foods are what we call non-starchy vegetables. So this is kind of what we think of all the stuff our mom told us to eat more of when we were growing up, you know, to eat your veggies. So I got some broccoli here and carrots, but that includes any kind of green leafy stuff, but also bell peppers, your summer squash, zucchini, onions, eggplant, there's a long list of those foods, and that's, for most of us, what we could be filling up our plates with to be healthier. Just like there's not one size fits all diabetic diet, there's also not one perfect schedule that's going to work for everybody. It really depends a lot on your lifestyle, if you take insulin or what kind of medications, and really your preferences. Years ago, it was kind of the standard thinking that if you have diabetes, you need to eat 3 small meals and 3 small snacks, and that's the only way to do it. And if that works for you, great. But if you're not a snacker, there's a good chance that you don't need snacks just because you have diabetes. Some people might, but not everyone does. I will say that most people, to control their blood sugar, usually do need 3 meals so that you're not having the highs and the lows. But it's going to be different for everyone. A word of caution for those of you that do choose to consume alcohol: you want to be sure that your diabetes is well controlled and that you've discussed it with your doctor. Alcohol can interact with medications, and you can also have instances of low blood sugar. And what complicates that further is those symptoms of being inebriated with alcohol can often mimic those symptoms of low blood sugar. So it can get you into a dangerous situation. Just make sure that if you do choose to drink, you're doing it in moderation and that you've discussed it with your doctor. So I hope this quick video has helped you to see that having diabetes does not mean that you can't enjoy all the foods you love. With a little planning, you can still eat a wide variety of foods and have a great quality of life, just like someone without diabetes.